and welcome to the Gun Show Taker Spotlight. This is about a game that everybody seems to be interested in so far. Most of my views got about the first part of Dragon Age. Well, a lot of people are asking questions online, not on my channel, but are wondering still if you're going to be able to choose your gender. Yes, you are. It's not going to have an effect on your gameplay. Female or female, really, to be honest. I mean, yeah, they'll probably say, look, she, her, and all that. But it is going to have an effect on how from what I know, it's going to have an effect on who you're able to date this time around, or get with this time around, I'm guessing. Somehow, some gender doesn't feel like that gender will have a large impact on NPC. So it will have an impact, but not a big one. It won't be a huge one like a lot of people thinking about. It's not going to be a big impact. It's going to be probably a small one. But I'm guessing it's probably going to be because what race you're going to be. Yeah, they add another race to this one, but I'm gonna tell you this. You're gonna be elf. You're gonna be able to be elf, unlike in part 2. You're gonna be dwarf, unlike in part 2. You're gonna be a human, like in part 2. Be able to be like in most of them. And finally, you're gonna be Qunari. Yes, I said Qunari, the mystic race that Sten was supposed to be the first Qunari. Then there was the whole freaking deformed horned Qunari from part 2, which I hope that's not the damn race they put out there. I'm wanting a more human but very, very large. I mean, it'd be cool if you could choose to have the horns or not. That'd be nice. Oh yeah, as in for gender, it's not gonna matter. Like usual, you're gonna be able to choose which gender of which race. Yeah, you're going to be able to be City Elf, I think, too, so I don't know if you count that as another race. But will it matter? Not so, says the director. Not in large part. Basically, it's going to matter, but I'm guessing it's going to matter what race it is. Because, I mean, Qunari, most of the warrior Qunari are male, stated in most of the things that you've seen with Dragon Age. So if you choose a female Qunari, what are they going to look like? That's the big mystery. I'm wanting to know. Are they going to look like Sten? Are they going to look like those big old freaking half dinosaur looking ones from part 2, which I didn't really like? I mean, that really pissed me off. Because at first it's just Sten. He's about 7 foot something. That was freaking awesome. It's just a race of humans, but a larger, more bulky race. But are you gonna be the ones from part 2, which look more like horned demons? They look more demon than anything? Or is it just another race of Qunari that you'll be able to be? That's a big choice, because they really did on that race. They looked down on females in the second, but in part 1, they kind of held females in high regard in a way, but mages in part 2 were held in low regard as a Qunari. So if you're a Qunari mage, are you going to be with the mask and the handcuffs and all of that like in part 2, because you're shunned? I mean, you're considered a marked one. I mean, that's kind of iffy on my subject, because at the beginning, you at one part, you can save a Qunari from being killed. A mage Qunari from being killed, you can save him in part 2. And he just knows how to follow. So, I mean, really, would that something you want to be, just knowing how to follow? Because he kills himself, regardless if you save him or not. He kills himself. Or you kill him. Your choice, good or bad. Can't choose to stop it. So, is it going to have an effect? Now, your romantic choices in part 2, I'm not sure if it's going to have an effect on anything, but your choices like, oh, whose side you picked, I guess, will. I chose the Mage's side because I'm not really one for people being punished because they have a specific ability. Of course, I didn't choose to be a mage, I chose to be a rogue like in both my playthroughs in part 1 and part 2. I chose to be a rogue. Now, will there be more fighting choices is what I'm wondering. Now this is coming out. There wasn't in part 1 or part 2. But part 2, it made very little sense. You couldn't change your... You couldn't change the equipment. You could change the equipment, but it wouldn't show up on the other characters, which kind of pissed me off. So I'm wondering if they're going to bring that back. Probably not. Which would freaking suck, because I got sick and tired of seeing the elf chick that my character was dating all decked out in freaking white, and I could barely see anything on her but the white costume. And I mean, she didn't look like she was very protected in the scantily clad outfit she was in to begin with. So just being able to upgrade their equipment sucked. And not be able to choose the weapons that they were using. By the way, you gotta admit that was a stupid idea. You tried something different and it didn't work. The combat system was great. But enough about that. What's the combat system gonna be like in this one? Well, in the following weeks leading up to the game, I'm going to slowly bring out more data on it as it comes out. But this one's about the gender, and like I said, it's not going to have much of an effect. Not much of an effect. Now, does this mean, like I said, if you're Qunari female, are you going to treat it differently when you're meeting up with the males? Because they specifically don't hold the females in high regard. They treat them as kind of like property, in a way. And that brings up a big aspect. How the humans going to view the Qunari race? Because they had a small but yet large part in part 2. Sorry, excuse me. Like I said, my allergies just bother me. But how big of an effect will your race have in the game? Because most of the area you're going to be in is human. There's very few elf populations still. There's a very few Qunari race. I mean, Qunari and all, I'm interested to see how the humans treat the Qunari. I might create 2 data sets. One as a human, one as a Qunari. To see the different effects. But that's going to be interesting. I mean, how are the humans going to deal with Qunari being in charge of an inquisition when the Qunari had little to nothing to do in part 2? Oh, but they tried to slaughter humans in part 2 the entirety. Because you'll be able to go to that city from part 2 in this one. I'm thinking. I haven't read up on it, but if you are, how will the Qunari be treated differently there? Because, yeah, this is 5 years after part 2, but how are they going to follow that up? I'm interested to see if Qunari are invading. Is there going to be a small set where the Qunari are starting to invade the human areas? Or what? Because, no, and not in any small part, but are we going to get to see their villages? Or are just going to be small encampments? And are you going to fight them like you did in part 2? That's going to be more of an interesting concept, because If you think about it, the Qunari in Part 2 were some of them were revolting. That's all I got for now. Think about it. Leave a comment. What do you think about the Qunari being added? Good thing or bad? Leave a comment below. Leave a like if you want. If you liked. Good luck. Good night. Peace out.